now call this regular meeting of the Board of Education to order at 7:07 p.m. We'll take a moment of silence and say the Pledge of Allegiance. And just to be prepared, I have a flag for you. How about that?
Okay.
All right, so.
Oh.
Oh, and there it is. Jason did that. All right, I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of
America and to the
to
republic
for
it
which it stands,
one nation,
under
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice
for all. Thank you. Okay, I'll have the coordinator call the roll.
Mr. Dixon,
Present.
Mr. Rollins,
Here.
Mr. Scrivano,
Here.
Mrs. McCulloch, Mrs. McCulloch,
Unmute. Hi, I'm here.
Mr.
Now
Siegel,
she's
here.
Mr. Connor,
Here.
Ms. Stanford.
Here.
With 7 present, we have a quorum.
okay, Mrs. Fromm, do we have any public speakers?
We do not.
Okay, thank you. So I won't have to read that. So are there any board member comments at this time? Okay, hearing none, we'll move ahead then to the consent items, which include payroll, accounts payable, purchase orders, contracts under 10,000, the bid recommendations for Fairview Early Childhood Parking Lot Improvement, the bid recommendation for Lathrop Elementary School asbestos abatement. The Marlins contract was pulled by administration. The consolidated staffing contracts for special ed that Mrs. Lawrence presented. The other consent items including workers' compensation settlement agreement for SD, the Freedom of Information log, the financial results for February of 2020, and the monthly cash and investment report for February 2020. Is there a motion and a second to approve these consent items? And please state your name if you're giving a motion or a second.
Mike Connor, so moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor,
Second by Anthony.
seconded by Mr. Dixon. Are there any consent items that board members wish to have pulled for separate consideration?
9B, Jude.
7B, David.
7B and 9B, okay. Any others? If not, I'll have the coordinator then call the roll on the approval of the consent items not pulled.
Mr. Dixon,
Yes.
Mr. Rollins,
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano,
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch,
Yes.
Mr. Siegel,
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Ms. Stanford.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Okay, I will now take a motion and a second for the approval of consent item 7B, which is accounts payable.
Mike Connor, so moved.
Thank you.
Anthony Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. Okay. Questions or discussion on 7B? Oh, hearing none, I'll then have the coordinator then call the roll on the approval of item 7B, account payable.
Mr. Rollins,
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano,
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch,
Yes.
Mr. Siegel,
Abstain.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Ms. Stanford,
Yes.
Mr. Dixon.
Yes.
The motion passes with 6 yeses, 1 abstain.
Thank you. I'll now take a motion and a second to approve item 9B under recurring contracts, which is the consolidated staffing contracts for special ed. Is there a motion for that?
Mike Connor, so moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor,
Second by
second?
Dixon.
second by Mr. Dixon. Questions or discussion?
Ray, I I should be hitting raise my hand, but I'm on the agenda instead.
That's okay.
So you read it as consolidated contracts, plural, as presented by Jennifer Lawrence. And so I was confused by this because I wasn't sure, based on the fact that the total cost said we are estimating maximum around $5 million under E. And then in the administrative recommendation, it says recommends the board approves the contract, but it's a single contract. It's just the Mongan contract. The rest was all background information, which then becomes apparent now if you go back up to the top under item details, where it says it's just for the $8,000. So it is not, as you stated in your motion, consolidated contracts. It is merely one contract for a speech therapist. And I have already had a conversation with administration about making sure that it's clear in the future that when they give background information, that it's very apparent to the rest of us what we're voting on. And it turns out, I found out today, I'm not the only one who had that issue. So I thought I'd make sure we all know what we're voting on.
Well, good. Thank you for that clarification. Any other discussion or question? If not, I'll have the.
Ken, can I just ask, not about the contract, but so just the background. We've got 18.7 FTE vacancies for speech pathologists. We've talked about this before, but then also 16 FTEs vacant for special education teachers. And what's the plan for getting those positions filled?
Mr. Zediker.
So we added our speech pathologist to the hard to fill for the incentives to offer the $3,000 sign-on bonus. That was something that we identified. That 18.7, most of those do end up getting filled through our contractors and outside personnel. But we are taking a look at all the other incentives versus housing and adding them to the 3,000. Still is a supply and demand. Most of like social workers, when they come with their education, they do start higher out on the REA scale. So that was another adaptation that we made several years ago. And right now it's continuing to work with universities and the special ed department to try to continue to recruit. But there isn't one specific strategy that we've developed to be able to answer that question.
Okay, any other comments or questions?
You see my hand raised? I did it on the machine thing here.
Oh, I didn't see it. I don't see it.
Anyways, so I had actually sent a request for information to Jennifer Lawrence and have not received an answer. And when you mentioned the piece about, this was 2 days ago or yesterday about our interns, or not interns, what are they? Students, like her comment in this was that we are hiring, we have had some success with hiring college students who come and work for us. And so I asked for numbers. I said, so what do the numbers look like? How many speech therapists, how many social workers who come and work for us as intern and do internships stay with us or have stayed with us after the last 2 years? So maybe perhaps somebody could get that information just so we kind of have an idea of how well that's going. It used to go really well a long time ago, and then we had a dark period.
Okay.
Haven't recovered. So thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? If not, I'll have the coordinator then call the roll on the approval of recurring contract item number 9B, consolidated contract.
Mr. Scrivano,
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch,
Yes.
Mr. Siegel,
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Ms. Stanford,
Yes.
Mr. Dixon,
Yes.
Mr. Rollins. Mr. Rollins,
Yes.
Okay,
the
thank you.
motion passes unanimously.
Okay, we'll move on then to closed session consent item. We just have the HR organizational report and addendum since we had no student discipline. So I'll take a motion and a second to approve the closed session consent item.
Mike Connor, so moved.
David
Moved by Mr.
Siegel,
Connor,
second.
seconded by Mr. Siegel. Any questions or comments? Donna, have the coordinator then call the roll on the approval of the closed session consent items.
Mrs. McCulloch,
Yes.
Mr. Siegel,
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Ms. Stanford,
Yes.
Mr. Dixon,
Yes.
Mr. Rollins,
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Very good. All right. Our next agenda item is superintendent's report. Dr. Jarrett.
Okay, well, I think it would be appropriate for my report. I'm going to offer some opportunities for Heidi and other cabinet members to chime in. But to start with, just to give a high-level overview, we've been very busy over the last 2 weeks. And basically, last week was our spring break phase, which meant we were doing a lot of work to get ready for this first week, which allows all of our students to at least have some written or online access that's very centrally created, very high level. And because the governor declared these Act of God days, we didn't have really full access to our teachers this week, but we are in partnership with the union, working with our principals today and tomorrow, and then Thursday and Friday we'll be working with our teachers to make a transition to a much more decentralized and building-centric approach to distance learning. That distance learning will also occur with a device distribution plan that's going to be available based on a survey that's going to happen to parents and students this week. So a lot going on and a lot of changes from this first preliminary phase to a much more intensive and much more building-centric second level of the plan. We've also been very, very intently focused on food service. You may have noticed today we added 2 additional sites. We also met with our labor partners today to talk about how we could come up with some additional partnership ideas to further engage in building maintenance work, in using transportation to potentially bring educational items to families. And we're really trying to strike that balance of keeping our employees and our students safe, but also meeting some really challenging educational needs in a large district like ours. So to provide any additional details, I'd like to turn it over to Heidi.
Oh, Heidi, you need to unmute your microphone.
It's as if I haven't been doing this all week.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you did a really nice job kind of giving the high level overview. I'd be happy, to kind of entertain any questions that you might have. But essentially, we are moving into what we're calling distance learning, which is not an e-learning plan. I want to make sure that there's a distinction there. An e-learning plan is something that had been previously approved or would have been previously approved by the Regional Office of Education and would call for 5 hours of instruction a day. We did not have a plan approved by the ROE prior to this crisis. And so our distance learning is kind of moving us in the next direction. It's important to know, I think, though, for you that the state has convened a remote learning task force, and they're working with stakeholders from around the state to determine guidelines moving forward. So we're going to go ahead and move forward with our distance learning plan, but I'm just very aware that that action is happening at the state level as well. And then finally, one last point would be that we've researched other districts that are our size or larger, and we find that we're very much in line with their approach as well.
Okay, my question, Heidi, would be student access concerns about any student that might not have a device or might not have Wi-Fi or maybe even our homeless students.
Yes.
And, how are we going to handle that access issue?
Great question. So we have a couple of approaches here. Our first approach is tomorrow that parent survey will go out. The parent survey asks them how many children live in the home, how many devices they have in the home, and if they have reliable access to Wi-Fi.
Okay.
Xfinity has pushed out free Wi-Fi access for all residents, but you need to be within a certain distance of a hotspot, an existing hotspot. There are 298 existing hotspots in our city, and we have those mapped out by address and printed, and they'll go out with a device to families, along with instructions on how to connect to Wi-Fi and how to charge your device. So once we put our survey out, we'll have some data that will let us know how many students per school would like a device. We plan for this survey to go out 3 times, one at 12:30, one at 6:00 p.m. for those who did not respond at 12:30, and then again the next morning at 8 a.m. We know that families are working various shifts and not all parents will be available at the same time. From there, we're going to aggregate that data by school. We're going to send it out to the principals, and we're going to ask the principals to call any families that are not on that list that they know do need support and do need a device or Wi-Fi. If after those efforts we still don't have a good handle on everyone who needs additional support, we're also providing, we're rallying our instructional coaches and Title I teachers to create paper take-home packets. And we haven't identified a method for distribution yet. It's a little bit complicated with the stay-at-home order from the governor. So we're seeking guidance from the EOC, or the Emergency Operations Center, from the city to determine what our opportunities are to deliver them if families are unable to pick them up. We are sending this survey home in English and in Spanish. We're working on Arabic, and we're hopeful also for Korean and Swahili. If we're not able to push it out through School Messenger that way, we'll be leveraging our parent liaisons to make those phone calls to families. So I think we're making a good faith effort here to reach everyone in one mode or another. But our guidance to schools is that now is not the time to be assigning new work for mastery or large projects or grades that could impact a student negatively. And that's guidance from the state, and we'll stay true to that.
Okay.
I have a question.
Sure.
Mr. Dixon.
So that was my question too, was how are we dispensing how are we getting the communication out there for them to be able to give us an answer? I think I heard parts of it, so you can repeat that. And my other question is, when we're talking about the state, do we have an input, or are we in the loop, or do we have somebody that's there speaking on our behalf, what we think that would help our district?
So I'll start. Would you like me to repeat a little bit of how
Just
we're going
a
to
little
ensure? Sure. So we have the phone survey in multiple languages going out at 3 different times of the day, 12:30 p.m., 6 p.m., and then 8 a.m. the next morning, to try and reach parents that we know might have different shifts. We're putting that out in various languages. And then we're asking principals to fill in the holes and make personal calls to families as well, and or use their parent liaison to make those connections with the families that we know are going to need support. And if we don't reach everyone that way, and we still have families who, for one reason or another, a device just doesn't work out for them, we'll have printed packets that will be available either for pickup or delivery once we know our options. And then to your point, we don't currently have anyone sitting on the remote task force with the state, but I think that's something that we could definitely look into.
Okay.
I have a question.
I have a question.
Ms. Stanford.
When will the e-learning actually start to take place?
Great question. We're going to start, we have at-home learning happening right now. We sent out frameworks EC through 12. I'm using them with my own children this week and into next week through March 31st. April 1st, our schools are building their distance learning websites, and April 2nd, we'll have lesson plans ready for families and students. Those lesson plans will be for April 2nd and April 3rd, and then starting the following Monday, we'll have 5 days of lessons available at a time.
Okay.
So we're just around the corner.
Mr. Connor.
Yeah, you interchangeably use the term the city and then the schools. So which is it that actually has the hot spots? Is it just the city of Rockford, or is it essentially organized by school?
The hotspots are actually already Xfinity hotspots that are located in the city. What Xfinity is doing is just providing free access for anyone.
I know, but the tenor of my question was about location. is it the city only? So for example, there's a number of schools that the people that live there don't live in the city.
Oh, sure. I understand your question now. Gosh, I don't know that I have the right answer for that. I believe it's within the city bounds, but I'm not positive.
Yeah. So I figured that would be the answer. So let me just say that that would be a gap, because clearly we have or likely have students that don't have access and they are not within the city limits. So I would expect us to at least have an answer on that, because you can't fix that right now. But number one, I would expect an answer. And number two, I would expect some kind of planning to be in place so we wouldn't be in this situation again.
Jason, I'm not sure if you are on here. I was just pulling up. I'm sorry. I wish I had the right answer for you. Right. Oh, you know what? I'm looking and I do see Cherry Valley. I see McChesney Park. Yeah, I do see Cherry Valley and McChesney Park represented in the 248 hotspots that are available.
But we have them in other places like New Milford. I don't remember if it's within the bounds of Roscoe and so forth. My point would more be there are a number of locations
Sure.
where there are students in RPS that are
And there may not be an Xfinity hotspot there.
You know, yeah. Then if that's the case, all I'd like to do is make sure, again, we can't probably solve that right now, but I would like that to be on the list so that we have that for our planning. And if we do e-learning, we'll absolutely need it.
Sure.
Okay. Any other questions for Heidi?
My hand was up. What is this not working? Let me
That's
look.
not working.
It says,
But go ahead, go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to lower my hand.
Okay.
So the surveys by phone and then paper and the others, that was answered. With regard to the Xfinity, I'm certain you could at least have a conversation with Xfinity if there's any areas not covered. That would, to me, be the place to go. We can't take care of that ourselves. Couldn't we have that conversation?
I mean, we can certainly have the conversation, and you know, I think there's been a national push for some of the larger carriers, and even for the federal government to allow various funding sources. I can tell you that without ensuring access either to Wi-Fi or to printed materials, the ROE wouldn't approve an official e-learning plan. So this will all be a part of our long-term work, should we ever find ourselves in this situation again, or if we decide to take a formal e-learning plan to the ROE. So these are all part of our considerations. I just don't have that answer tonight.
Okay. So I was trying to understand what you were talking about with regard to the curriculum work we're giving students. You said that, so first of all, is it going to be, are we asking our teachers to cover all subject areas?
Yes.
Yes, so elementary as well, all subject areas, obviously not specials.
Including specials. We're asking our PE teachers and our fine arts teachers to provide enrichment activities and opportunities daily for students.
Okay, but we're not, I mean, we're giving them devices, but we're not going to be sending home art supplies, so we can't, I mean, that is something to keep in mind anyways.
Well, and that's not out of the question. We're talking about all the tools that students need to be successful at home. Okay. So we're trying to keep ourselves open and creative and kind of listening to what families are needing. And I'm pretty confident that if there's a need, we'll figure out a way to fill it and ensure that they have the supplies that they need at home.
So can you speak more to your comment about we're not expecting mastery? What is it we're expecting to gain out of this time with the e-learning?
We have 3 goals. The first is that students are feeling supported and that they're staying connected with school, which is an important anchor in a child's life, as you know. The second is that we are providing opportunities for ongoing academic focus through problem solving, reading, and writing. And the third is that we're offering students high quality feedback about their work as well.
So talk a little bit more, if you would, about that last one, about the feedback piece.
Sure.
They will be submitting some sort of work to their teachers, I assume, and that will all be done electronically.
Correct.
And then, go ahead.
We have 3 different platforms that teachers can choose to use. For our younger children, teachers can use the platform Seesaw, which you approved last year. We have a district-wide premium license. The second option, which many teachers are already using with their classes, is Google Classroom. That's a free tool, and it's already in common practice across our district. And then the third is Schoology, which we're primarily using right now for teacher professional learning, but it can very quickly be used for a class structure as well.
So out of those, the elementary is Seesaw primarily?
Generally. Some of the 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders are using Google Classroom as well, but generally Seesaw is more comfortable.
So how, I mean, not my forte is computers, but how does the e-learning occur? Are the teachers doing online classes where the students, are we taping them? I mean, are they, what do you call it? It's not taping nowadays. There's my age. Are they recording them? And then the students can turn them on whenever they want. I mean, I really don't have a picture of how this is going to work with our students.
Sure. So there are lots of different ways that this can look. And I think we need to understand that just like students, will be entering this at all different levels, so will our parents and our teachers. So what we're asking people for starting next week is that we've created a template. Let me start at the beginning. We've created a distance learning website that will be launching next Thursday. From that, parents will click on the name of their child's school. That will open up their school's distance learning site. And then from there, it's very simple layout, and they're going to find their child's teacher's name, and they're going to click on their teacher's name. When they click on their teacher's name, up will pop 5 days worth of lessons. And they'll be very simple, offering, 1 meaningful activity per day plus reading in balanced literacy, if I'm in elementary, balanced literacy, numeracy, and then enrichment activities from the specials teachers. Now, what's in those boxes can be hyperlinked to the things that you're talking about. So if I'm a teacher that's really comfortable with technology already, and I've already recorded myself maybe reading a book aloud to my children, or I have done a little, 3 to 5 minutes of instruction that I want them to see, or I'm showing them a science experiment that I'm doing, I can pre-record that and link it in. Another option would be to link in there and take my students out of that lesson plan and into the Google Classroom or into Seesaw or into Schoology. There's also a few other products called Nearpod and Flipgrid. Our teachers are familiar with many of these tools already. But for those of them who are not, we're really just asking for that 5-day learning plan, and it's 1 Google Slides worth of learning, and that's where everybody's going to start. And I would love to do a visual demonstration for anybody who wants to take kind of a virtual tour on what that looks like. You can just connect with me offline, and I'd be happy to do that for you.
So the other thing I'm not picturing is how much parental input is going to be required, especially for the elementary students? So, a kid, a 1st grader who doesn't read now clicks on something and there are instructions, for example. Is our expectation that parents are participatory in the process?
I think for students to be most successful, I have a 1st grader at home. And I have learned, this week teaching at home, that I need to be with him a good deal of the time. Not entirely, but I need to get him started and ensure that he's clear on instructions. And these are things that we need to be really considerate of, because not all children have that opportunity. And parents are stressed right now. Families are trying to really acclimate to this new normal. They're trying to work from home or carry the stress of being an essential worker. Many of our children are taking care of younger siblings in their homes. So what we're asking for from our principals and our teachers is flexibility understanding, and compassion, and that our number one goal right now is about connection and providing opportunities for students to still engage meaningfully. That said, there are other families that want more. They want more rigor, and we want to be able to provide those opportunities for those families as well. So by decentralizing this, once we've got the framework out and putting this back to classroom teachers engaging with their own students and families, we'll be able to meet families where they are. And then our job as a central office becomes ensuring that there is support available for every step of the way. So the teacher that may have started really tenderly with just laying out some typed plans, we're going to have a video professional learning opportunity for them to say, how could I maybe step into Flipgrid? What would it look like if I started using Seesaw? And then beyond that, all teachers will have access to each other's plans. So there can be that kind of natural networking of, I really liked that idea. I'm going to email this teacher and see if they can help me. Our instructional coaches and Title I teachers then also become connectors. They're going to be curating some of the most creative or kind of easy to implement ideas as they find them. And we'll have a Google Sheet going by content area and grade level where we can keep teachers connected with great ideas.
So, and thank you for all that, but the word that really stuck out to me was frustrated, because I can see parents being frustrated as well. So as much as that we can put in video form,
yes,
so that the parents, especially as kids get older and the math kind of gets beyond parents and the like. And so talking about getting beyond the secondary, will obviously, you won't click on a school and go, you'll go to your teacher, but will there be any sort of testing or anything else that will help us get our, for example, seniors graduated through and credit for courses that other students are taking as to keep them online for that? And you might talk to the AP piece, because Erin spoke to that earlier and I didn't hear you talk about that here.
So as of right now, the College Board is still planning on giving AP exams. They're looking at a 45-minute online platform. So we know that our AP children, they're not children anymore, students, are going to need some support. Our AP teachers have already been reaching out. The College Board is putting out a few free platforms in the coming days. There's a YouTube channel starting tomorrow, and we're plugging our teachers in with those opportunities. And then with regard to the parent side, when you go to a school's distance learning website, there's going to be a little button specifically for parents. And on that will be video tutorials on even how to navigate some of these different things. So there'll be video tutorials plus written instructions plus a frequently asked questions page for parents. And then there'll be the same thing for students and the same thing for teachers.
Okay, my last point, and then I've had too much airtime, and I apologize for that, but I hope everybody had a better understanding, is that considering the population that we're working with, and our constant goal is to get more parental input because we don't have it necessarily. This can either really be great because parents step up, or where there's going to be a bunch of kids left behind. So I know you guys are doing the best you can, but there are certainly factors that we can't, there are out of our control. So thank you for all those explanations. I'm lowering my hand now.
Thank you.
Okay.
It's not.
I didn't see that either. So any other question for Heidi? Are there any other cabinet members that want to give a presentation? Mr. Rollins?
Yeah, I just wanted to just comment, not really question, but I was glad to hear Mrs. Detman make a comment about having sort of layers and knowing that there are at least some parents out there that want a little bit more, because that's what I'm hearing from. So I'm hearing from middle class parents who want to know why we're not already doing distance learning. I'm hearing that Boylan is already up and running doing distance learning. I'm hearing the suburbs are already up and running doing distance learning. And I'm a little concerned hearing 90% of the conversation is really that we're going to only be, I don't want to say catering, but we're going to gear the system to the lowest common denominator. And we have a range of students in this district, and I do think we need to take care of all of their needs. I understand, I very much understand the issue with the kids who don't have the resources, but I would hate to see us not address the needs of kids who do have the resources because of some, I think, misplaced concern about equity. We do have an obligation to those people as well.
We do, and thank you for that comment. And I think by providing the structure and really kind of putting this with teachers and their students, teachers know their students best and are going to be able to provide the opportunities that they need. And then we're asking our principals to ensure that they're monitoring all of these plans that are being submitted on a weekly basis. And we'll just continue to iterate until we get to the place where we're really meeting everyone's needs. But this is an incredible challenge at this point in time, and to turn it around really pretty quickly. But I'm pretty confident with the structure that we have set up that we're going to be able to differentiate for people and their needs.
Okay, Mr. Rollins, anything else?
Nope.
Okay. Any other cabinet members that want to express anything? Dr. Jarrett, did you want to wrap it up, or is there anything else you want to?
Wait a minute, Ken.
Okay, Ms. McCullough.
I'm sorry. One other thing, Jason's there, Heidi's there. All this with electronics and with, I don't know how much emails and technology and all the others, and we just survived the ransom. How are we making sure that we are not vulnerable with all this e-learning? Is there something that we need to be doing or we are doing? I'll mute.
So from a technology perspective, this is Jason. We do have our help desk staff in addition to our network administrators that are monitoring our systems and our firewalls while these devices are being deployed. We've put a number of different things in place since that ransomware to be able to protect us as well. And we've got a lens and a view into our systems more than we ever have. So we almost instantaneously can see if there's something that's going to be problematic for us, and we can address it and isolate it within a matter of minutes.
Well, I have one other follow-up question for Dr. Jarrett, and that is, I know I'm going to be asked by the media, when do we expect school to reopen? And I think the answer is that's really up to the governor right now. Is that correct?
Right. That
Okay.
decision has really been taken out of our hands. It's an excellent question. I think we are preparing as if school will not reopen until next fall, but are hopeful and cautiously optimistic that the health conditions will improve and the need for the level of social isolation that has been in the plan will eventually subside. But I think we are approaching this distance learning plan with the idea that it has to be sustainable for the remaining 10 weeks of the school year. So that's not ideal. I think it's, I don't think any district is going to be as good at providing support for their students without some of that face-to-face and some of that support. And we're certainly no exception to that. But I do believe that we're going to put our the best possible plan in place to meet the needs of our students with that worst case scenario in mind.
Okay.
I have a question.
Mr. Connor.
Yeah, since you brought it up, what I'm wondering is if essentially the school year is, I don't want to call it canceled, whatever the term might be, is there either a policy or a plan in place for graduation for the students that are going to college or to other learning opportunities? Do we have something in place, or is that a TBD?
That is both a TBD, but there have already been discussions with the high school principals. The problem with going too far down this road is some of this decision making may be taken out of our hands with, depending on what the governor sets for rules for how many people can be in a room together, et cetera. We do know that this is going to be a very, very important topic. And as soon as we have more information about what the parameters are, we're going to dive in and work with the community and the board and our high school principals to do the best we can to make sure our families get some semblance of closure to the academic experience. We are hesitant to do too much heavy duty planning because there are so many unknowns right now. But I would imagine as soon as we get this distance learning off the ground here in the next week or two, we will have more information about the governor's intentions, number one, and number two, we will have more bandwidth to focus on issues like graduation, prom, a lot of the milestone kind of events that come up, with graduation obviously being the most important of those.
Is
Okay.
it possible that the regional office will have any control over what's done, or will this truly be state-driven?
I think we will maintain a lot of local control on our academic decisions, but in terms of rules about how many people can convene in a facility, large group gathering like a graduation, I think that is likely to be taken out of our hands. So we would have to look at virtual options or small group options, or gosh, it's going to be really challenging. My guess is there will be a lot of statewide brainstorming, because we will be one of 800 districts that are in the same boat in the state of Illinois, and I would guess tens of thousands across the country that are going to be wrestling with this issue if the situation does not improve prior to the middle of May.
Okay, any other questions?
I totally apologize. When Dr. Jarrett says something, sometimes a question arises. Will it really be as late as May, or more likely April, mid-April?
Yeah, I think the declaration would be earlier, but I'm saying by middle of May, the projection would have to be that conditions would be better, because that's when students start graduating across the country. You know, commencement for universities starts even earlier than that. So my guess is once we're going to get a lot more guidance in the next few weeks on that issue, and we're very closely monitoring that. And it was one of when Dr. Vosberg had his meeting with the high school principals on Monday, it was one of the first topics that came up, because we know how much this means to families.
Okay. Okay. Let's move on then to our action item tonight. Is the 15A is District Management Group, DMG, that Dr. Vosberg presented. This is for the RISA project. Is there a motion and a second to approve this action item?
Mike Connor, so moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor.
Anthony
David
Dixon,
Siegel, second.
Second by Mr. Dixon. Any questions or discussion?
I do. See, it
Ms.
says my
McCullough.
hand is raised, but you're,
Well, it's not working, but I
I'm
can
so
hear you.
frustrated. I'm trying to follow the rules. Okay, so I just have a quick question, and that is the $75,000. What budget, and this may be for Michelle, what are we budgeting this out of? Is it the school budget that it comes out of? Is it a central, or is it a title budget, or what is it?
This is 1003A money from Illinois Empower, and RISA was awarded an additional $100,000 at the start of the school year, above and beyond what was approved in their work plan last March. So this is additional funding, and we'd like to, it's in the budget to be spent by August 31st. Obviously, with the school closure, we may not fulfill the whole $75,000 of the contract, but the language is worded such that this is just an agreement to do work, and we still would agree on being invoiced for actual daily rate and work completed if there's days left in the school year. And there was a plan to do some work in the summer as well.
So my second question then was, if they aren't able to come in because of the end date of the contract, can we apply for an extension? And if we can't, is there anything they can do virtually with the staff at the school, or to even to monitor and encourage the whole participation in the distance learning?
Yeah, that's a good question. And the first option you raised was rolling over the money, and I do, that would be a state level decision. There are limitations to how much you can roll over from one school year to the next. The virtual work would be, to work with the principal and DMG to decide if that's the best use of resources. It could be pretty difficult to execute, but we would look at any and all options. When you work with a national level consultant, they're problem solving with districts all over the country that are in our same position. So they may be thinking of ideas that we're not even thinking of today to do the work. But the contract doesn't obligate us to the $75,000. It just lays out the parameters of the work, and then we can proceed after that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Now I'll have the coordinator call the roll on the approval of action item 15A, the DMG contract.
Mr. Siegel,
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Ms. Stanford,
Yes.
Mr. Dixon,
Yes.
Mr. Rollins,
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano,
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. We're now on to other business and new business. And the item that I have is the board member action steps. And the one that I wanted just to remind everybody is Heidi's offer that if you want to follow up on a demo on distance learning and how that is going to look and how it's going to be rolled out, contact Heidi and she'll set up a time to meet with you or meet with two of us at a time or something like that or whatever. Okay, with you, Heidi?
Ken, also with regard to Heidi and what they're sending out, is there a way that we can hear, I'd like to hear what the survey is saying to people. Is there a way that they could share a script or whatever?
Heidi, you need to unmute your mic.
It's been a really long week and it's Tuesday. So sorry about that. If you'd like, I can just tell you the 4 questions now.
Okay.
It's how many children live in your home? How many children who are of student age and RPS live in your home? How many devices do you have in your home? Do you have access to Wi-Fi consistently? And are you able to transport yourself to pick up a device?
And do you specifically say what a device is? When you use the word device so that they know, I mean, are you saying phone, tablet, computer? I mean, are you telling them what you mean by a device?
Well, Heidi's screen just froze up. Oh, there you go, Heidi. Are you there?
Yeah, I think so. Sorry. I think you got stuck and then I got stuck.
Okay.
And I didn't hear the question. I apologize.
Okay, my question was this. Your question number 2 was how many devices you have in the home. So as a parent, I go, what's a device? So is that a phone, a computer?
It enumerates in the question.
Pardon?
We say that in the question. We say, how many computers do your students have access to, such as a Chromebook, a laptop, a Mac, or a desktop?
Okay, so a phone doesn't count, even though those are little computers.
No, that wouldn't be enough for a student to be successful.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, any other items that board members or administration needs to follow up on?
I just want to compliment Mrs. Stanford for her the accompaniment of the Bears help to counteract
Bear down.
Thank you for balancing things out.
Dr. Jarrett, this is Earl Dotson Jr. You took the words right out of my mouth. I was just about to thank June Stanford because I'm sick of Dr. Vosberg. Thank you, June Stanford. Thank you.
Actually, I was going to say
you're a hero to many of us Bears fans. We are many in number, although we are humbled after the season we had this year.
That's great.
Actually, I was going to ask if June's cat was going to sign in on it.
Yeah, we did.
His name is Simon. He would love to join.
Oh, that'd be great. Okay, if there's no other further comments or agenda recommendations, I'll take a motion and a second for us to adjourn. Moved by Mr. Connor, seconded by Mrs. McCulloch. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned at 7:56. I want to thank everybody. I'm glad it worked pretty well, and we'll keep trucking along here, okay?